And now, a very important message.
Hi, my name is James Roguski. I am the moving force behind IndependentCongress.com. Our purpose is very simple. We're fed up with the same old from the Democrat and Republican Party, and we are supporting candidates who are running for Congress, that is the House of Representatives and the Senate in 2022, so long as they are not part of either machine. If they're independent or from some of the other parties like Green, Libertarian, Constitution, or any other party, you have our support. And all we are offering is access to information about the candidacies of various people, because we know that the mainstream media is not going to help them out. We're getting support from alternative media who are interviewing candidates and getting this information out to people so that everyone can know that in 2022, when all of the districts are going to be redrawn because of the latest census, you will have more than just the two boring choices. It's not just Democrat and Republican. You will know that you have a choice to make a change that you see fit when you go to vote in 2022. So visit independentcongress.com, get involved, and contact me anytime. My name is James Roguski, and you can reach me at 310-619-3055.
Are you ready? Break it down. Yeah. I go. Break it down. I go. Crazy raw. You heard? Bust it. Who want it? Yeah. It's like that on the wannabe fake. Straight out the crates, baby. Paul Job Max. From the basement chemist with my brother.
Assange! Every fucking one of my events starts with Assange. Ali will be spliced in here. Assange right now is suffering every day. Theo Chino, who right now is undergoing extreme suppression by the mainstream media. It is his work that made today's event possible. We're gonna have videos. It is his research as in terms of getting the names of all the candidates together and the voting blocks.
I wanted to welcome everyone. I'm really pleased to be here and be hosting a first of a kind panel in New York City. We're bringing people from all across the political spectrum, and people from all parties, including independents, and we're going to have a really productive conversation and just about creative answers to make things better. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the mic back to Sarah, who's a TikTok star.
Thank you everyone so much for being here today. Thank you especially to our panelists who are here. I think it's super important to have conversations about political issues in a nice way where we can all respect each other and voice our opinions and feel safe about it. So my first question for you guys is, more and more people have joined the conversation around fair policing, particularly young people who are engaging in these conversations for the first time. What, in your opinion, do we need to keep in mind as we work together? Does anyone want to take this question and start off the conversation? Ira, maybe? Sure. Great. Do you want to grab that mic, press that orange button, make sure it's on, and go for it.
So first of all, thank you so much to Zach Wiener and his campaign for having me and a conversation like this. I think this is what democracy looks like, and too often we end up in our silos, whether we're online or we're in person. We surround ourselves with like-minded people, and we don't reach across and actually look to be challenged. So it's conversations like this that will really push us downfield.
Before we get into like the nitty-gritty, we'll get there. We're starting with, what do we need to keep in mind as we work together with different opinions? Like, how can we move forward in what do we keep in mind as we're coming together constructively? And you can start if someone else has something to say about what we need to keep in mind as we work together.
For new people.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about
Go
this.
for it.
So, again, thanks so much, Zach Wiener and his campaign. For this conversation to even be productive, though, I think we need to actually start it as if we want to succeed. You know, start with the end in mind, and understand that there is common ground, right? As much as social media may tell us otherwise, and the news may tell us otherwise, and it may feel like we're so divided, there is a lot of common ground out there. And it's with the right attitude we can come together and find that common ground. It just requires participants who want that. So I think that is the number one way to have a productive conversation, is come to it exploring for the common ground, not trying to reaffirm our own biases.
Love that. Yeah.
But to actually find where we overlap, and that's where we can act. I think too often we have agendas and we feel uncomfortable, like, making alliances with people who aren't traditional allies.
Right.
But that sort of attitude needs to shift. And once that changes, I think there's a lot of room for success.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, does anyone else? Yeah, that was awesome. I totally agree. Anyone?
Yeah, I would like
Yeah, Vitaly,
I
go for
want to
it.
say thank you, Zach, because people who drew it from the start, from the heart, and a young blood doing this something fresh and democracy. I'm really appreciated, guys, invite me. Biggest issue in New York, I have experienced a police auxiliary for 3 years. How I noticed in New York City, we got a big problem. First of all, it's age discrimination. Most of them state you can be a police officer from 21 and no limit age. Because when you're getting older, you got more experience, you got more life experience, and you're mentally ready to solve the problem in a peaceful way. New York State, 36 and a half, and it's mean like, if you're older, you're not allowed to join the police. It's mean like, how are we gonna solve the problem like finger trigger happy? If people wanna get action, if you're some kind of person older, they can calm down any kind of situation, and it can be a really simple way to resolve this problem. We don't wanna get shooting. We see so many shootings like in the black guys for no reason. But if you do the smart way to calm down situation with all these people, I think we can solve a lot of problems. And like, for example, all these politicians right now, I got experience. You're already old, you're not gonna change anything. You completely deep in the corruption, deep in the trouble. And like young blood, like Zach, trying to really change something. And from the heart. And they're trying to do honest way. No corruption, no any kind like trouble zoning, because they try to do from community, from local people who live around us, who get inspired from young kids, elders, to help the people true way, not get interest with the money, with all these broken promises. It's again, every year we got a broken promise and next year coming again.
Yep.
Zach, thank you for doing this. I really respect what you're doing.
Thank you. Awesome.
I'd like to ask.
No, we're not doing questions.
We'll take audience questions at the end. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So, Devon?
Yeah, well, my point is, people say that they understand and they want to do this or they want to do that, but in all actuality, I take Biden for instance. He have yet to do anything for minorities. The first the first day he got in, he did something. He passed a bill for the LGBT. Within 100 days, the last 30 days, I would say, less than 30 days, there's been an uprise on Asians. And within this 100 days, he's already placed a bill to stop hate on Asians. But there's been hate going on in this country, and bigotry, racism, all across the board, and everyone seems to ignore it. And everybody takes minority people for granted, and no one is willing to actually go and sit down with them and talk, go inside their living rooms and sit inside their places and actually get to see actually how these people live. Because a lot of people have no idea, absolutely no idea how the other half lives. I was campaigning in Highland, and I came across a lady whose husband died of COVID. She doesn't speak English. She's been in the country 40 years, and her husband died, and she never worked, and now she's living off of her husband's savings. And when his savings are gone, she's going out into the streets. She has no, she has no alternative. She has no help, no nothing. And people right now, if I didn't tell you the story, you wouldn't know she exists. So a lot of people like that out here that exist. You see the homeless, they walking around. A lot of them have mental issues. A lot of them are veterans. And that's another thing. It's just like people take a blind eye to real issues, and they get on their soapbox in the beginning of. I'm not saying you or anything like that.
No,
You can even say call people out.
I don't know you like that.
Yeah.
The little bit of that I do know, you seem like a genuine and nice person, and that goes a long way because some people will smile in your face and already be taking the shit out of their
Right.
back, ready to stab you. So,
No, I think being genuine and kind is part of, bringing these conversations to light and like hearing opinions from.
And I agree with you definitely in terms of people not visiting and seeing the other side of things. We took a tour of some projects in NYCHA housing over on 61st, and we found out the budget was not reaching them from the community board, and almost no one from that community was on the community board. There's 51 members. So it does seem to be there's this huge disconnect. But there's a lot of talk about things and then not a lot of first-hand
Not a lot of
experience.
action.
Or
Exactly.
action, or even first-hand
Yeah.
experience. I hear that
Right.
for sure.
Totally.
And you could say anything you want about me. Hopefully I'll change your mind as time goes on.
So far you're at 100, though, so you want progress now.
Okay.
That's a real democracy.
Atara, do you have anything to add to what we should keep in mind as we have these conversations and work together?
Yeah, and if it's okay, as I respond to that, I also wanted to respond to the way that the question was also
Yes,
initially
of
phrased
course.
to the youth and to the newly engaged.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
also coming off of what Devon shared, so just to give you a brief sense of who I am, so my name is Atara Vogelstein, and I'm a licensed therapist. I'm a creative arts therapist. And so I first want to say that I really recognize the privilege that I have to even be here, to be in this room, and to be voicing my perspectives, and also that I feel really grateful to you, Devon, for being here, because you do bring a different experience and a lived experience that I think, as you were saying, so much of society ignores or takes for granted. And I want to just acknowledge the voices that are not in the room, and all of the people that are the most directly impacted by some of the issues that we're talking about: policing, police brutality, police violence, and how a lot of those individuals are not present. In terms of the way that the conversation is being presented, policing for the future, the future of policing.
So it's really just
What should we
saying
keep
there's
in
a big
mind?
conversation around fair policing.
working
What should we
together.
keep in mind as we move forward?
And to work together.
I got it.
Ah,
Yeah.
You are
The
moderating.
future of policing and public safety. So if there's anything that COVID has really highlighted that you also started to touch on, Devon, there is no such thing as safety for all. There's no such thing as public safety, right? What's safe for someone is not safe for someone else, and it's less safe for someone else even.
Right.
And that the constructs of policing and of public safety were actually originated in constructs of white supremacy.
Yes, for sure.
To keep the power, the authority, the control in the hands, the pockets, the system of those who are already in power.
Great.
All right.
That's right. I think that's like a great point too that you brought up. When we're talking about policing, like how many people of color are really in the room, how many Black people are in the room to talk about it, and that's a great point to even start off with, because we need to acknowledge that.
Well, who's in the audience? We got Patty Ryan. I'm very excited to watch this, and we'll continue our discussions. Head of the Tenant Association over on the Amsterdam edition. Someone who's doing a lot of great work, and a lot of people in this community are.
No, totally, and I think it's great to have people watching. Whatever,
Very
it's just a
involved
good
with
thing to just note as we move forward. Like there are voices that are not in the room.
Yeah.
Can I
So what's the
also
next?
add-
Well, we got a lot. So let's get on to the next
Can I just
question.
add a couple things, because I think it's important to address the youth and the newly
We're
engaged
probably
that you
going
mentioned.
to get to questions that have to do with it at some point,
Okay.
but I think, why don't you start, I'll ask the next question and you can probably incorporate it into this question for sure. So, what are some concrete problems surrounding for you, the police and justice system today, and what do you believe are some constructive solutions to this problem, or like some points of views on this problem in the community right now? And Natara, why don't you start off for this one?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest issues that are on the forefront of my mind are the over-policing that occurs, especially in communities of color, and how this just contributes to a continual system of violence and oppression toward BIPOC communities. And I believe very strongly in moving the paradigm toward a more restorative justice paradigm, so that we're not criminalizing, we are not further oppressing, further traumatizing these individuals and communities.
Awesome.
Well, you can thank the Giuliani administration for that, with all of the attorney's laws that he put into place that made it possible so that what you're talking about is going on today. Because a lot of the laws were designed to round up Black people or round up minority people, and they're being affected by that today. A lot of them have felonies. They can't get guns. They can't vote. They can't travel out of the country. There's a lot of stigmas on top of that just because someone decided, hey, I want to know what they're doing over there. And two, I like that neighborhood. It's getting ready to come up. I know in about 20 years we want to make it gentrified, and so we'll let it go down. We'll let it go down, and we'll flood it with crime and drugs, and then we'll say we need more funding because the neighborhoods are out of control. Even though it's been proven that most of the cops been putting the drugs and the guns in the neighborhoods. Like on Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's called Jump Out Day, and what they would do is they would get a snitch and they would give him drugs to go sell, and they'll watch him, and then everybody that they see go buy the drugs from him. And they'll give him mark money or whatever, and he'll go either buy it from a dealer or he'll sell to somebody, and that person will get change, and now they have mark money on them. And so now when they get arrested, they have mark money, so now they're in a conspiracy with, so now they got just a simple addict trying to want to go and get high. Now he has a felony because, somebody targeted this area. And you can see it on Franklin Avenue. You can see it on in Flatbush, on Church Avenue, Flatbush Avenue.
That's where I live.
Yeah, you see it now. Just about 20 years ago, that neighborhood was just pretty much run down. The streets had potholes, everything.
It's an interesting, there's a lot of things to talk about with that neighborhood. You one block, it's like giant houses, pristine lawns, and you move over a block and it's like a totally different world. It's very racially segregated for sure.
I want to jump in with one quick thing, which is I think that something great to be done right away in terms of what you're talking about and specific policies on Tuesdays and Thursdays is I think working with your local police officers. We speak a lot with Sergeant Rodriguez over here, and he liaisons with Patty Ryan and people in the Tenant Association. I think that can go a long way. It's super local action to make sure that stuff that is going wrong can be addressed. Also, the community boards have the power to bring cops to the meetings to discuss issues, and unfortunately, in our community board at least, there's not really fair representation. So So I think that these are definitely major concerns, which can be addressed at a super local level.
For a simple fix, you can just mandate that police officers live in the neighborhood that they police.
I love that.
I like that idea.
They're members of the community
Right, exactly.
that they are policing.
Change the law they want, because right now the police officer is not allowed to work in the same area with his leave. They did
Well, I'm saying that should be changed.
Yes.
If he lived in the neighborhood that he worked in, he would have a more connection to the community.
Yes, that's how we get involved in your community. If you live there, you know better, you know everybody.
Just like politicians have to live in their community, so
right.
doctors have to, in order for them to be residents, they have to be in a hospital in that neighborhood.
If you want to be the president of the United States, you got to be born in the United States.
So I have a slight variation on that, and I actually am proposing to pay officers 5 to 10% more if they live in the districts where they serve. And I think it's the right start to sort of push us in the direction that we want to see. Let's use the market forces that we have to get the outcomes that we want. I suppose we could look at actually mandating it.
Or hire potential officers from the neighborhood. There are plenty of ROTC programs. There are plenty of people in the neighborhood that apply for police officers. Hire them.
I love that idea, and that's a great idea to circumvent before we can pass the mandate right away. Offer the pay increase. Although you're saying it's against the law? Is it against the law?
Against the law. You can't work where you live. And one more thing, like I said.
Oh, interesting.
We have volunteers, 5,000 auxiliary officers in New York, 5,000. Most of them that people with color, Asian people, and immigrants. It's meaning all these people who is older, they want to join the police. They want, but they can't because age. And same people live on the project, they want to be in police because they know the neighborhoods, they know how to help. But New York law, nope, you're not interested.
What is the law exactly? That's
first of all, age discrimination. Second of all,
if you're too old,
yes,
you have to be under a certain age to become an officer.
Yes, and second of all, if you live in this area, you cannot work in the same precinct. It's a law.
Right, which is what
you have to. They're gonna send you in a different area. You don't know anything about where.
And what is the purpose of that law?
It's a safety for officers. You are a community representative to save community, not to kill community.
Right.
That's the main reason. If you live and work really good, people gonna respect you. People gonna help you. If you live in a different area, you don't care what's going on in there.
Wait, but you're saying the law says you have to live outside of your district.
Yes, you have to work outside where you live.
You can't be a police officer in your district.
This is a classic example of the government being corrupt and passing laws that don't make sense. They're not actually there to serve us. that's a very arbitrary law, right? If we pass a law, it should be reflective of human nature or ecology. It should go back to some root reality that we're trying to put guardrails
I have to
for.
push on Albany because Albany have to do this law. They have to talk to the Chuck Schumer.
Sorry, I'm curious, because you said there's 5,000 auxiliary police officers?
Yes.
And are they able to respond to 911 calls, or how does it work? Can they just patrol?
Back in the time, because I didn't have a lot of knowledge because I came here 2006, but some police auxiliary officers was in the 911 in the district, someone died, but one more thing, all these volunteers who volunteer for police, they don't have insurance and they have any kind of compensation. If they get killed and shot, city, sorry, not us, we're not gonna pay you.
And they didn't have guns, right? They don't have
They
guns.
don't have guns, no. They just have a brave heart, that's it.
Oh, you don't have any? Wow. There's it, yeah.
A stick?
Yes.
Yeah, you got a baton.
I think this is a really interesting idea of
Don't
having
speak.
people become police officers who were in the neighborhoods where they would serve. It also does concern me though with what you said of, you know, using this pay increase as an incentive to have people join, because I can also see that very much becoming a way for people to also continue to grab power or, you know, to be motivated because of that economic gain. And of course, in a lot of these communities, there do need to be more employment and economic opportunities. But I feel very strongly that the nature of policing needs to change. Right now, when I think of policing, I think of a way to keep order, right? To keep people in check. It criminalizes people, it reduces the humanity of people to have police responding to things that people who are mental health professionals could more aptly respond to, so that there actually would be a reduction in the violent responses and altercations and de-escalation in a lot of these situations where no physical force, restraints, guns, tasers, anything would even be required.
Tara, that actually brings up my next question if you want to respond to that, but about 60% of wrongful deaths by police will involve someone who is mentally or emotionally disturbed. Clearly this is a problem. What do you think is the best way to handle emotional or psychiatric emergencies? Do you think do you know of any existing services that handle psychiatric emergencies? Are there programs with social workers or therapists, or do you think the police should be handling this?
Yeah, so there are cases where you'll have mental health crisis units go out and respond to calls to 911 calls instead of police officers who don't have that mental health training. And to have mental health professionals on the scene where the crisis is happening is so vital, because if you think about it, if you have a person who's in crisis, maybe they're experiencing acute psychosis. A police officer is not trained to be able to assess, is this person agitated because they're responding to internal stimuli, right? Hallucinations, delusions, tactile hallucinations, because they might be having an emotional disturbance that's related to past trauma. Perhaps they're neuroatypical, perhaps they have ADHD or they're on the autism spectrum. And so if a police officer arrives to the scene and starts giving them commands or aggressive body language, this can just aggravate that person and cause further, it escalates the problem and the crisis.
Yeah.
Rather than, from another approach, if you have someone who's trained to be able to respond with the body language that might say, hey, I'm actually here to support you,
Good, I got
to
you.
ground
Yeah.
you, to give that person space to
I
be
want to ask a
able.
question on it because I know you guys can put this together later, right? This isn't live. Like it's live for me, but whatever, right? Yeah? But check it out, right? She just said that a police officer cannot distinguish if someone is listening to hallucinations. Would you say that's true, Vitaly?
I would like to say we have to start from basic. We have to get the training for police officer.
I agree with that, okay. Also,
training,
yeah.
psychology training. Because you have to know, because you have to do ECP, right?
I think that I could tell if someone's hallucinating, but let me tell you something else. The thing is that, look, I'm a homeless advocate for a long time, and I'm very concerned about the rising role of mental health. Right, I know you guys edit this out, whatever, but let me talk about this right now, because honestly, right, being a homeless advocate, when the mental health people show up, right, a lot of times they take away your agency. I heard a number cited that these people have psychological issues. How easy to, once you say that they have psychological issues, to do things to them without their will, to do things without their agency. By the way, have you ever seen psychological, like in the prison system or in other cases, abused? Not, yeah. I'm gonna ask Devon, because he's been in the system, right? Yeah? Are you gonna hear this from the managers? Are you gonna hear this from the doctors? No. What about someone who's been in the system? Or what about, I wanna hear from them.
Yeah, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. Well, one thing about the system, let's take New York State. You have a bunch of rednecks pardon my French, with an axe to grind, and a lot of them have these theories that the people in New York are wild and that they deserve, to be locked up, and that's how they come there and they come there with that mentality. And it's pretty much, they have the run of the land. It's sort of like modern day slavery, basically. There's you have no rights, you're not even considered a human being anymore. You're a number.
Yeah.
I'm so skeptical of the medical health industry. And
Well,
a lot
there
of
is-
colored people are.
There is a problem though, because we do have a lot of people who experience psychosis and are criminally insane, and they don't get in front of a doctor, and so they're just sent to jail. Right now, Rikers is the largest mental institution. I think it would ultimately be better if we could get people in front of a doctor and compel a certain level of treatment, a 72-hour hold.
And also destigmatize mental health
People on
issues.
Rikers Island have something different to see.
And if we're going to get them to see a doctor, let's not get a doctor who works for the city or work for the state, and they have a vested interest in diagnosing people.
Right.
So, a lot of times
Right.
they'll diagnose you with ADD, or they'll diagnose children with ADD so that they can pump them with
Rikers gets a
medication.
whole bunch of visits.
Yeah. So-
Would you say you saw people in the system? Because my impression was that a lot of people are in there who were experiencing or are experiencing some form of severe mental illness, and that's what led them to be in there, and they're criminally insane, but have not been assessed as such.
In prison, you have nothing but time, and with time, you have you have nothing but to think, and then you reflect. And a lot of times, some people, I've heard stories. Jamal, I'll just use his first name. His mother was a crack addict in 1988, and she had a daughter and a son. Her daughter was 8 years old, and she used to let a white guy who was a doctor, she used to let him come and have sex with her daughter. He was having sex, it was a child, and he, ravished her, and he wanted to go again. And Jamal said, I'll do it. And that's how he became, turned out like that, so to speak. He was having sex with the guy to keep him from having sex with his little sister.
Oh, there's a tragedy.
And, I guess he was using drugs to suppress those feelings, and it led him to just do some crazy things for drugs.
Yeah.
And he got locked up, and once he was locked up, he couldn't take that, and then he just started, I guess he was listening to drugs, and he just started just doing a lot of crazy things, and they moved him somewhere else, so I don't know whatever happened.
Oh, they moved him to treatment.
Yeah.
As long as
I don't know if
they
they
moved
moved him to treatment, but they moved him out of the unit.
Alright.
So I don't know whatever happened.
Because we used to have, until the 70s, we had state hospitals, and we had 600,000 hospital beds provided by the state for people who are mentally ill, and now we have 19,000.
Well, my mother worked for Brooklyn Development Center. She was, I forgot what it was. She's retired now. She lives in Florida. What that place was they were awards of the state, whether they were babies or whatever. A lot of times, a lot of them were Jews, so to speak. A lot of the children, the people there were Jews. I don't know why, but that's just what it was.
A lot of babies were Jews?
Where in Florida?
No, my mother lives in
Brooklyn,
Florida now, but this was
Oh.
it was Brooklyn Development Center. It was called BBC. It was on Fountain Avenue. It's no longer there now. They put a new development over there, but that's where it was.
The Jewish babies?
They had a lot of Jewish people there. My mother had a client. She worked there 33 years, and she had him when he was an infant.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh my God.
the wards of the state, the parents don't want the kids. Maybe they have a minor deformity, or whatever the cause is, the parent doesn't want them, and they become a ward of the state. And this is where they end up at. And they grow up in mental institutions. There was Willowbrook. I don't know if you guys ever know about that.
Oh, Willowbrook was a tough
Yeah.
place. That was not
So when
good.
they closed down that, they opened up all of these, centers.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened,
Yeah.
just about, but on a smaller scale.
I'm hearing you touch on so many aspects of how systemic abuse happens, and something that I'm thinking about that also goes back to some of the earlier questions around the presence of police in communities, and what's very popular now is the hashtag defund the police, and the importance of taking the funds that go to policing as it is in its current state and putting it back into these communities so that they have the infrastructure for healthcare and mental health care and access to these resources, economic opportunities and recreational and arts and culture that we can bring to them by really going to these communities, asking them what they need, and looking at the prevalence of drug abuse and incarceration.
Yeah.
This can all change if we go from the ground up
Totally.
and just change, I mean, not just change, because obviously it takes tons
It
of
takes
work
time,
and openness,
yeah.
but we need to change the nature of how policing occurs so that we don't have these rates of incarceration and people growing up with their children.
I feel if the federal government stepped in and took over all of the branches of the police force and made it federal, then a lot of, because you have to realize in the South, a lot of the officers are there. It's been generations, generation upon generation upon generation. So just like with the police officers, like the fire department here, most of them are their grandfather worked there, their father worked there.
Right.
You know? When 9/11 happened, you know, it was a shock because they were like, wow, whole families were being wiped out
Right.
because they were all working in the fire department. You know, they were all working in the police department. So this is why, you know, things like that, and they had to, okay, well, now we got to go restructure the process of how to become a firefighter so that more people become firefighters now. More people become EMS now.
I think it's actually extremely dangerous when the federal government gets involved with such local issues like policing. Policing is different in every community, and to have, especially in a transcontinental country with hundreds of millions of people, 50 different states, to have one standard for policing, every single police officer, every single community has to abide by. It's so unlikely that we would pass the perfect regulation that would help everyone, especially in the context that the government systemically doesn't serve the public. It serves the
It would
special interests.
definitely turn around states like Pennsylvania, who are common law states, and they write their own laws. Because if you ever get caught in California, Pennsylvania, or any of the other common law states, they pretty much can whatever they feel like doing, and you have to fight the system, the federal system, to get out of there.
So that's the state law, though, right?
Yeah. So each state allows write their own policing laws. So if you had a federal government with a mandate, it's just a straight law all across the board, you would have everybody on the same playing field, just like with the federal officers. They all have to follow a specific guideline. So you don't see federal officers just shooting people just out of, you know, with the quickness. You don't see that. You don't see federal officers when they come up to you, they already have their gun and they hit them with, you know, aggression in their tone.
I think the federal government has so much of their own work to do with Guantanamo and so many military abuses and the war on drugs and so many other failed projects at the federal level. For them to get involved at state and local level, I think they have like their priorities, and we in New York City have ours. I'm running for mayor, so my scope is New York. I think it's important that we have local control over our police departments, education, all these issues that the majority of our budget is going to. We need to have control over that, and if there really is some powerful, meaningful federal regulation that is really proven to be effective, like, we can have that discussion. But I think that really should be a last resort. We as New Yorkers need to have control over our own
Well,
police.
if it wasn't for federal law, we still would have Jim Crow in the South.
It's definitely an interesting idea. I never heard it. It's very innovative that the federal government could take everything over. And we sometimes the military is very organized, for better or worse, and can have sort of a uniform rule. So it's an interesting idea I hadn't heard before. Definitely a lot of work to do at all levels.
Can I ask you what your vision of community policies that might be different than the current way that police are utilized would look like?
I feel if you see people as human and you look at their human rights, and then you look at their civil rights, then you just focus on that, and that right there would be the template on how people conduct themselves and how people act, how people interact with one another, because you're always thinking of this person's rights, who you're talking to. This person has a right to be respected. This person has a right to be assumed innocent. This person has a right. This is their right, inevitable right. So if you're not looking at a person and you're just looking at, oh, I just want to make it so this can happen, this will run smoothly, you're going to hurt some people along the way. The people that build the railroad, a lot of them unfortunately died, but they got things from point A to point B faster.
We did get, yeah.
So, I just want to ask Vitaly, so you worked on the police force before?
I was a police auxiliary volunteer.
Okay, so you were auxiliary police.
Yes.
So, I'm going to direct this question for you next. There's been a 75% uptick in resignations from the police force recently. Do you think that this is a concern? And if so, what do you think can be done about it?
First of all, it's education. You have to get better education for police officer, better training. Like we said, we got psychology training. Have to see the person, not the object. The person. Have to get psychology training because you have to know how to talk. Because maybe you have to be friendly, even just like your pose to standing next to him, he can help you. Same thing, if you see how they do the shooting range training, it's just like head and the body with your heart. Because eliminate the targets, that's it. But first of all, you have to shoot the kill, then you can talk what's happening. That's called basic education. You have to get better educated police officer with psychology training, with more important MMA fight training. Because maybe you can prevent any kind of bullet because if you use your hands. Why? Because most militaries, like for example in London, police officers doesn't have a gun. They're not carrying a gun, they carry only baton. But they do have old experience with Irish party with a lot of saints. And anyways, they don't have a gun. They don't have a killing like we got New York, not only New York, United States.
Yeah.
Ireland no gun?
In London, police officers, they don't have a gun.
Ireland also.
Only SWAT team, and you get something happening, then show up with a gun. Regular police, a cabbie, no guns, just batons.
Yeah. Wow.
That's what I want to say. First of all, training, education. Because a person came to police department, they already know, I'm right, you are wrong. I had experience like before I get auxiliary, I was just like a second-class citizen. I get ticket 3 in the morning in the train because I was sitting in 2 seats. 3 in the morning, excuse me, because I have an accent, because maybe I'm different looking, and already got a ticket 3 in the morning sitting in 2 seats.
Really? Wow.
It's empty train, why you give me tickets? You know, but again, if you got well educated, a good knowledge, good experience, you're gonna be a perfect police officer. It doesn't matter what kind of color you are, because racism exists every time. White, black, Asian, there will be exist, never disappear. But if you do the law, each one responsible what they said, what they do, that's gonna be perfect.
MMA, I love that idea.
That's what I hear.
Gracie
Try
has
to
been talking
disrupt
about
real
that.
democracy.
But I think that there does need to be a focus on addressing implicit bias and systemic racism. So I hear what you're saying about providing more education, maybe utilizing means of de-escalating the situation that don't require deadly weapons or excessive force. But we also need to do more from the ground up and from the top down, honestly.
And from the top down, for sure.
Yeah, to be able to address the implicit bias that exists so that a police officer might have this education, might have this training, but what really does that mean if they see a black man on the street and their stress response increases and they think this person is a threat to them, which causes them to react in a way that's different than they would to a white man?
Yeah, sorry for interrupting, but I give you a heads up. I was applying for Metro Police Department, they have age discrimination. I didn't pass exam, I was too soft. Instead to shoot in the head, I was using taser, all these questions. But they said, when you pass exam, first of all, you have to pass polygraph test. And polygraph, simple question, are you racist? How you react to other race? If you pass all these polygraph tests, you police department.
We just have more questions I want to burn through.
Yeah, but I think
questions.
it's important
Yeah, just
because
we can keep the conversation going.
DJ just expressed feeling like his voice is not being valued and not being heard, and I just want to say, DJ, that I do hear you, and I hear you expressing a lot of anger, and that you have a right to be angry, that you have friends who have been abused or even killed by the system. And when we talk about white supremacy and the structures of white supremacy in policing and in public safety as it was initially posed, this does extend beyond Black people and brown people. It also goes into other communities, Latinx communities and Asian communities, and people who are differently bodied, differently abled, people who...
Russian Jews. Russian
And I
Jews.
feel like
Russian Jews specifically.
From being an activist in the scene for over 20 years, I feel like often we're presented with a false choice, this A-B, this mainstream media approach, right? I feel like the thing is that the racial stuff I deal with in every aspect of my life is just too bad. I'm gonna deal with it, but I want accountability from the police. Absolutely. I want to find out what works. I don't need any platitudes. I'm going to understand. You're not going to understand my racial situation. That's okay. I'm not mad at that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Let's just make this shit work.
Well, we're on our own mainstream right now. But this is why you organized this and you did a terrific job. We brought everyone together. Yeah,
we need guys that are willing to listen.
And I think Sarah's doing a great job so far.
No, and I totally appreciate that.
How many
can I ask you a question?
Build policy without even asking a police officer. Right? They're having all these forums. We have police officers and person who's been in prison, affected by the system. This is what we need to hear from.
That's right.
Activists who have been working on this issue, right? Versus candidates. Why would you think they know about everything?
No.
You know what I mean? And are they going to listen? Are they going to listen to the people? What do you say? It's a broken string of promises. As the activist, how well I know that. How well I know that.
Totally, DJ. And we're tackling that, DJ L7, we're tackling that today. And I think that's why this is so productive and good. And I appreciate the passion. Yeah, and you did a great job organizing this. And Sarah, thank you. You've done a great job moderating so far. And what's next? What's next on the docket?
Sorry.
Just wait
a second.
And I'm sorry, you know what? I thank you for being here. I know that was tough. I know the perspective just came down left field. I
appreciate your
being here.
And listen, I appreciate your opinion, and I really care about your opinion, and I want to learn things from you. Trust me, I do. I think my specific question was, the thing that put me off was that it was about the polygraph test. That specifically brought that out of you.
Yeah.
I just listened to a shit ton of true crime broadcasts, and that's what I know about polygraphs have been wrong. People are forced into falsifying, doing confessions that aren't real. They're interrogations that go wrong. That's why I was saying, if you ask someone on a polygraph test, are you racist? How can you really trust and be okay, you're not racist, you can be a police officer?
There's real problems.
No, it's not point to say polygraph going to resolve everything. But the basic thing, we're already going to ask the person.
Because I know the polygraph test, I know what questions to ask you to make it seem like you're
No, I
think
know.
he's giving an example.
When you give an example polygraph test was kind of psychology person who know what you're lying or not.
A lot of people talk about stuff they don't know what they're talking about. That's my concern, right?
But we're bringing up all these issues to resolve this issue. And all these problems, for example, Black, Asian, I think when you bring up one problem on top of each other, you divided us.
Okay,
I think the best way, we have to be, we're human beings, we live on the planet Earth, and we important for everyone. I don't want to divide it because I feel like a second-class citizen because I'm allowed to vote for president, but I'm not allowed to run for president. And I'm still, it's like Russian got slavery 1,000 years, and it's horrible.
Serfed them.
Plus we got military service for 25 years for free, and it's happening. Awesome. But again, I came to this country for freedom, opportunity to meet beautiful people, different race, because it's a country. That's what we love America.
And New York,
I'm proud to be American, guys.
Oh, good. I like to hear that because especially New York, we're the most diverse city in the world in the history of the world. And I think if we can make things work better here, and I think this panel is a great example of this, where we have constructive, open-air conversations. What a great sign it is for history and progress.
It's a true. When I came to this country, I was a racist homophobe because my country, society, teach me what's right, what's bad. I'm not gonna other candidates. Oh, I believe in black, I believe Asian. I came to this country already racist because my country teach me. Gay people bad.
Yeah, Russia really is.
Black people bad, Asian people bad, only white people good.
Right.
But I'm going honest, I said, but when I came to this country, I'm changed my mind. Because that's an opportunity to change. That's what I'm changed, and I'm proud of this. Some people are gonna say, I'm a super Democrat, but inside, fucking racist.
Well, I feel like right now the tone is everybody feels like they have a voice, in which everybody does. The climate is teaching us to speak up now. Before, a lot of people were suppressed, and now a lot of people have something to say. They're saying it just didn't happen to you, it happened to me too. Everybody experiences racism. Everybody experiences some form of, dictation or some kind of negative run-in with the police. Not everyone had a good run-in with the police, and not every police officer is bad. You have to realize that they come to work every day with a fear that somebody is going to shoot them. Somebody is going to kill them. There are over 5 million guns on the streets today. And how many people are in New York City? We have 5.7 million people. So there's over 500 million, there's 5 million guns on the street throughout America. So that means there's enough guns to supply everybody in New York City.
And they shooting every day. Every day.
But I'm just look at the, look at the horror of that.
Yeah.
These many guns just floating around.
Yeah.
Just floating around.
That's terrifying. That is scary.
Yeah.
And I heard an interesting thing. This girl that I'm not quite dating, but we're involved, and she had an interesting
Who?
point. Lola. Yeah, Lola, not Kat. No.
She doesn't know because when she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm on with my friend.
She told me a really interesting brain development thing that if you're exposed to a more diverse environment in every way, in terms of race, sexuality, everything, it actually develops the front of your brain. I don't remember the names. I'm not so good with this stuff. Prefrontal cortex develops, and then when they'll do tests on you, like the test you're talking, well, not a polygraph exactly, but any kind of test to test someone's biases. And if they were to scan the brain, a different part of your brain is activated more. If you have experience, it's almost like a learned practice. So I think that's another great thing about New York and why we have a shot here to do better.
Actually, yeah,
It's a great point.
MRIs are
Also,
developing
the
where they
fear
can-
is the fear is really real, and that's a good thing to consider too. That we talk a lot about a lot of training, but fear management. I mean, that's hard. That's definitely
Yeah, the same thing when you say that cosmonaut, for 1 year, there's specific psychology training because people are going to be met each other, kill each other. But you pay the training to send it. That's how it's works psychology. Even though it's like scan the brain, whatever. It's like brain is a chemistry. It's all this chemical reaction, and you know what it's working. They do a lot of researchers and know how to connect. Can you imagine like for 1 year on one ship, one person is like a mate. One day you just want to kill him. But like because my friend, he grew up.
You're saying astronauts. Sorry to interrupt. You're saying astronauts,
Yeah,
cosmonauts.
yeah.
Oh,
Because
cool.
people like it's crazy. He was like we playing together in the same neighborhood. We're playing in. He got a stepbrother. They've been living at different age, probably 6 years. But both of them end up in the prison. And one day when they meet each other in the freedom, he cut his head off.
Look at
Two stepbrothers.
Oh, he cut his stepbrother's head off?
Yeah.
You know,
He
like,
just.
in what setting?
No, the point is like.
Wow. Where were they? At home?
Yeah, they were at home. They're two stepbrothers.
One thing that was
God.
interesting that I think that we're
That's a
headed
hard-
towards was I think we're starting to talk
Russia,
about gun
or-
control, right? We talked about violence.
I think
How can
you
we-
cut. I think you cut him off.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, I was asking. I'm straight in Russia. Then?
Yeah, it's in Russia. It's like when I grew up in my neighborhood because I lived in the project 12 years. It's a Russian project. We got the toilet, but we got the shower on the public on the first floor. Had to go female male. That's a project, real project.
Oh my God, you had a dormitory bathroom there.
Yes, and it's like the whole family when coming back home. It's a fight. All these adults fighting with broken glass, and you just excuse me, let me go home. I have to finish my homework. That's a project. That's my
Same here,
use.
same in the projects here.
Yeah, it's like, but this one you call police, you're gonna show up in 5 minutes, or we're there 5 hours. But I'm not proud of this, but I understand the people who live here say like how they're struggling, because I know I'm living in these shoes. I understand. What we hear, we're gonna share the knowledge, experience to come with the good ideas. Other politicians, they got a mansion, they got like assets like $10 million. How are you gonna talk to help the people? They have no idea. We're gonna right now spend the time to discuss all these problems. Instead, we can go to watch movie, lay down, to do TikTok, and playing. But we're here.
Definitely do TikTok.
TikTok's
I'll see you
good.
on there. I'll see you on there later.
Yeah, we're gonna make you a TikTok.
You gotta follow me though.
Okay, I'm not sure if you wanted to respond to something Talia had said. I also would like to, if you'd like to go first.
The moment's passed. I'll let them. That's good. That's good. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
We're doing for good, sir, right? We're here to help the real
I
democracy.
appreciate your perspective as having an experience as a police officer. I think that's very necessary. So thank you.
Oh, it's not me. It's not like a lot of Asian people because you speak like me with accent. But with a brave heart.
I'd also like to give you extra credit right now because you're an auxiliary police officer, which means that he's a volunteer. He doesn't do it for the money, he does it for the love of the community.
That's right.
So putting
Yeah,
honestly,
for sure.
That's guys who's New York. Everybody, hello, auxiliary police, respect. You guys keep doing. I am done because I'm a politician involved, but you guys keep doing. Like I really respect what you do.
okay, so you know,
My mom's thought about joining.
I was going to bring up, like, we could talk about, right, gun control then. That was something that I heard talked about earlier. What do you guys think is appropriate for gun control? You know, as you
Okay.
think, yeah.
History. I will tell you history. Before 1905, you can buy a gun in New York City.
When? 1905.
1905. Then it's making a law 1911. I think in August, like you have to get the license because it was Tammany Hall corruption Democrats because it got involved big corruption.
Tammany Hall.
Yes, and then it passed a law on the police officer and white supremacy allowed to carry licensed gun. But before it happened, everybody got a gun. And in statistic, the crime was lower than they passed the law only white people get. This means before everybody, black, Asian, immigrant, they can't have
So
a gun.
you're against gun control?
It's I'm not no. I'm for background check.
Okay, exactly.
And each one person, what police doing? They prevent it. They're not stopping in the process crime.
Interesting.
The crime is happening.
I'm
What do you
sorry,
think?
but I just feel like if you're a taxpaying citizen, you should have a right to bear arms. Suppose something breaks out, and because you committed a crime 20, 30 years ago, you shouldn't be able to protect yourself?
No, that's what I'm talking about. Everybody allowed to defend themselves. I'm supported for legal gun control. Because right now we said 5,000 guns, not legal, and keep killing. How many legal guns killing every day? Zero.
Well, there was a man in Virginia who said his house was broken into, and 13,000 guns were stolen from his house.
What?
Why did he have
Oh my
certain-
God, that's a big house.
First of all,
What is it doing?
if somebody came to your house and to steal 13,000 guns, that means that a truck had to pull up. Your neighbors watched somebody go in and out of your house. You got all these guns, and so happened that. No
Are you sure it was not warehouse? Not house?
He said his house was broken into, and he had logged 13,000 guns. Over 13,000 guns were stolen.
That's impressive.
But you don't have camera. You got all of these guns in your house, but you have no cameras.
Devon, I understand what you're saying.
I'm saying he's selling guns.
Who is this guy?
That's what he's doing. He's selling guns.
He's definitely selling some
I know
guns.
it's
Oh, I
my-
didn't understand that.
He's going to the gun store, he's buying guns, and he's selling them. He's stockpiling guns, and he said, "Oh, somebody broke in my house and stole all my guns. 13,000 guns are missing because now his guns that he had are showing up in crime."
Yeah.
So he's saying he has to say somebody stole his guns.
So it
Correct,
seems like
but
generally,
no.
yeah, it seems like generally we're against gun control. Now I want to hear what she had to say because I'm very. A lot of people tell us to fund the police. They're trying to refund into mental health stuff. What do you, or maybe it's something else. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I mean, if you want to focus on guns now, that's okay too.
I mean, I've heard from police officers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I definitely want to hear your part as well.
Thank you. I mean, I definitely am not for guns. I feel like there are so many deaths by gun violence every single day. That yes, there's a difference between owning a hunting rifle, but the fact that any person can go into a Walmart and buy a gun with no check into their background, into any kind of mental health issues, it's very problematic. But I did want to, if it's okay, since you did ask, respond to what you were describing earlier
I
about
appreciate that input. Yeah.
the polygraph.
That makes a lot of
and-
sense to me. Actually.
Well, one thing I want to jump in. So this is good. It's freewheeling, but I want to kind of give the football back to Sarah because Sarah is moderating and she has the question. So I'd love to just.
I'd really love to talk about qualified immunity because I feel like that's definitely a big issue right now. Just so you guys know, it grants government officials, they get immunity in civil suits. So it comes up a lot, like with police officers and shootings. And I was wondering your stances on qualified immunity and why you have that stance. So we haven't heard from you in a while. Ira, why don't you go ahead and start?
So I'm immediately suspect of anything that grants a certain subset of a population advantages that the rest of us don't get. I think there should be equal treatment under the law, unless there is a very specific reason why not to give equal treatment. And it's on the government or it's on whoever's passing this law to tell us why we are not enforcing the law equally. So I actually haven't heard a good case for it. I haven't heard anyone really come out and defend this is why we have special treatment for government officials. This is why we have special treatment for police officers. I haven't heard the case made well. As I understand, this is a Supreme Court interpretation. It was never passed by law. I think, especially given that it is only for government officials, and the government is proven time and time again that it's corrupt. So to protect arguably the most corrupt citizens, obviously not everyone who works for the government is corrupt, but it is a subset of people who are prone to corruption because of the power that they have. And the fact that we are going out of our way to defend them by law and take away some of our recourse as citizens to get justice through civil suits, I think that's inherently wrong. So I'm not for it, but if somebody made the right case for, the history of why it came to be and why it's still applicable now, maybe there is a subset of cases where it would be appropriate, but that case has not been made to me, and I can't defend it as such.
No questions,
I think it would be beneficial to open a certain.
Well, let's go around everyone and then we'll open to questions after.
Yeah. Anyone want to respond immediately to that?
Well, I feel if you're at work and something happened that's work related, you're not held responsible for that. If you did something negligent, you should be fired. But if you did something criminal, then you should be prosecuted. Let's say someone working for General Motors and his job was to tighten the bolts, and he didn't tighten one of the bolts, and somebody drove the car and they crashed because the bolt wasn't tight. Should that person go to jail for murder because he didn't tighten the bolt? No. He just, it was a mistake. It was, things happen.
If this guy put some kind of bolt in a nuclear factory and forgot the tight, I think it's a human mistake, and you have to be responsible for this because one car, one person, but like Fukushima or like in Russia was 1986.
Chernobyl.
Okay, but that's for cleanup. But was he criminal when he did it? Did he do it with the intent? No.
Right.
He didn't intend to do that.
Yeah.
That was not his intent. I don't believe officers go to work with the intent to shoot and kill someone. And if they are going to work with the intent to shoot to kill, then yeah, that's criminal.
Well, give us an opportunity to prove it in court.
Right. Exactly.
If the burden of proof is on the person bringing the suit, don't stop that case from happening. That's what qualified immunity does. It stops that process of justice from taking place.
It kind of like protects the person that's working. If you're at work and you did something, just out of sheer, I just didn't do it the right way, or you shouldn't be held liable if this product hurts someone.
No, I think you have to be liable. For example, if you do inspection with a jet flying, you have to put it anti-frozen liquid, and he didn't put it, didn't check it, because he's responsible. It's that's something different. That was his job to make sure that there was coolant fluid in there. And if there wasn't coolant fluid in there, then he didn't do his job properly. That's what I'll be on the same page.
Interesting.
Whether he did his job now, if he didn't put the coolant fluid in there because he wanted a crime to take place, that's one thing. If he just did it because he forgot, that's something else.
Now, I'm glad that Vitaly talked because actually in my interview with Vitaly, we talked about the fact that they built a bridge. They wasted millions of dollars, right? And then we can see that a lot of people want to socialize everything, but I need people to be careful about that, right? I've been part of political organizations for over 20 years, activist, working on, and I've never seen any organization not get into this thing where they kind of protect a certain established class and they leave the rest of us out to dry.
Interesting.
So the thing is that when you talk about qualified immunity, right? Yeah, not only is qualified immunity going on the court system, but there's qualified immunity going on everywhere that's leading on to huge losses for our system, just like that bridge. To nowhere.
Funny thing is, politicians, they have qualified immunity.
Yeah.
Now we don't get in trouble for laws we pass.
Under the law, all equal.
We do
We have to be responsible for all the stuff.
Yeah, qualified immunity just lets people in power hide behind their actions and not to take accountability for their actions. It's a shield.
That's not all it does.
And
You're not on the panel.
it doesn't value human life. If we continue to allow these instances of brutality, of neglect, of abuse continue, and there is no accountability, that just allows for further abuse to occur.
Is it
And
that you're
we
totally
do have a
immune?
question. I think it's fair to bring it into a Q&A.
We're almost, I think, through. All right, you want to go to Q&A?
I think
How
in
much
this
questions?
specific, because I think the question that Sherry has is around qualified
No,
immunity
I'm just looking
or a statement or whatever. I think, if you'd like to take the floor, I think that would be appropriate this time.
Well, I was also interested in having everyone introduced formally.
We did that already. We're not doing that.
Oh, okay.
We did that way
We'll
before.
have closing remarks at the end, but I think it's around qualified immunity.
Okay.
You don't have a question. To become clear, you don't have a
The
question.
qualified immunity.
You don't even have a question.
Why in the world would a man or a woman wake up in the morning and want to go out there and possibly get shot with no immunity?
Well, I think qualified immunity, my understanding is that it gives you some. I'm not honestly well versed enough. My impression is because I'm running for city council, I try to really focus on what I can do. Doesn't seem like we'll be able to necessarily have much input on that. But my impression is it gives some leeway for the people who are in charge. But I think to Devon's point, if someone's criminal, committing a crime, a police officer in any area of society, they should go to jail. I don't know how qualified.
Was that your point?
Yes.
I think a lot of this also goes back to what Vitaly, you were bringing up about when you're in training to become a police officer. You said that what's needed is there's a polygraph test and you check off a box, am I racist or not, right? How problematic this is, because most police officers, we could say, are good people, right? They want to do good. But where the issue really lies is in the fact that someone who has racist beliefs or implicit bias about another group or another individual because of their racial presentation or perhaps their ability or any other marginalized presentation, right? This gives them the ability, without holding them accountable, gives them the ability to just continue in whatever actions, behaviors they're already taking,
I ask you,
without taking ownership of where they do have room for improvement, where they do have racist beliefs, where that implicit bias actually costs us the value of that human life. And so it's not that they're showing up to work in most cases saying, I want to shoot this person or I'm going to kill this person, but in most cases, when the crisis escalates and that stress response is triggered and fear is triggered and they have a split second to decide what to do and they're armed with a murder weapon and they're armed with a taser and they're trained to use restraints that do cause harm, they are going into aggressive defender mode, right? They're in the role of the aggressor in that context. And so, right, into fight or flight, and usually, and this might be something that we get to, but so it's like for the police officer, they're responding to what they perceive as a threat, and usually the person that they are responding to as the threat perceives the police officer as a threat because of whatever experiences they've had that have told them that the police officer is the oppressor or the abuser, and so they can't trust them, or from prior experiences of trauma and harm.
That's why I love the MMA idea, by the way. I think that's a great idea to train people in jiu-jitsu and other forms of combat.
And psychology too.
And psychology, big time psychology, both. Yeah. Because you learn, if my brother's been doing jiu-jitsu, I can no longer spar with him, not that I ever was able to, but because he's trained. But a huge part of the training, surprise to me, is restraint. And controlling, you said, the fight or flight, and knowing how to not hurt someone in a fight, because you're doing tournaments where you're hitting each other, but you don't want to injure each other. So I think that's good, that in psychology.
Yeah, same story. Like in Japan, you didn't hear the story how many Japan officers killed the suspects because they get really well trained in Japan.
They do stuff right over there.
Yeah, it's like, and like again, why is there a lot of
fake news?
Why a lot of kids resist arrest and running away? Because image of police already hurt themselves. They already know what's happening next. That's why kids running, not kids, adults, because they know something happened really bad.
Yeah.
If it was like really good reputation and a good experience, like, okay, officer, what's wrong? No problem. Get my document, you're ready to go. But they already know something happens. That's why it's a try to escalate and run away, because they know I'm gonna get shot. People who's working on the front, who gets most hurt, they was united because they try to help each other, they work together. But rich people who is like, I'm a politician, we will help you. Well, you know, oh, I'm somewhere in Florida. Yeah, that's a big moment.
Benedict Arnold.
Good really. People stay together, bad people running away.
Check it out, y'all.
You're listening to the realest. You're listening to the realest voice in progressive media. DJ Elf 7.
It's a dark day in our nation when high-level authorities will seek to use every method to silence dissent. The truth must be told.
And if you want the truth, you need to check out independent media producers just like myself, DJ Elf 7. You should subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notifications when I release a new video.
Truth of these
we
words
are on all
is
the
beyond
major platforms.
doubt.
That includes Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube. Unfortunately, we have definitely seen that these mainstream outlets will cave to corporate interests, so we encourage you to join our independently moderated communities of Reddit and Discord. We also encourage you to subscribe to us on BitChute and Dailymotion so you can see the content that YouTube doesn't want us to let you see. Hey, now it's time for the most important part of the video. That's right. It's time for us to tell you about the Taking Action Group. Do you need an activist? Or maybe there's no activists around willing to help you with your cause and you need to learn to become an activist. That's exactly why we're here. Every week we get it with people from across the nation, in fact even sometimes internationally, and we develop strategies and a game plan to address the issues that are affecting all of us. Every week myself from New York City and of course my co-host Lisa from Los Angeles provide a coast-to-coast perspective on what's going on in the country. If you want to donate to help out with expenses, travel, equipment, stuff like that, then I definitely appreciate it, and you can hit us off at Venmo or PayPal. Thanks a lot. Hey, by the way, we also have a merch store, so check it out. Oh my goodness, it seems like you've reached the end of the video, so make sure you check out some of our other videos, make sure you subscribe. This is your last chance to do so thanks a lot, and looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please comment below if you have any questions or issues you'd like me to address. And if you're an activist, the time to make things happen is now.